Welcome to Women Leaders, Tales, Trails, and Truths, the podcast where we uncover the inspiring stories, journeys, and insights of successful women leaders. Join us each month as we explore the paths that they've taken, the challenges they've overcome, and the truths that they've discovered along the way. So whether you're seeking inspiration, guidance, or a deeper understanding of what it takes to lead, you're in the right place. So let's dive into the next episode. Today, we're joined in the Warwick Innovation District studio by Dr. Penny Kechagioglou, Consultant Clinical Oncologist, Chief Clinical Information Officer, and Deputy Chief Medical Officer at the University Hospitals Coventry and Warwickshire NHS Trust. Plus, she is also a podcast co-host, she's an author, and much, much more. And she's here to share her tales, trails, and truths with us. So Penny, a very warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Penny, for the introduction, and I'm honored to be here with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, you know how excited I am to be chatting with you today. And it's not just because we have the same first name or a very long last Greek name that people cannot pronounce, but you know I'm a huge, huge fan.
Thank you, Penny.
So let's start from the beginning, because I heard you once say that you left Greece to come to the UK to study and become a doctor. With the aim of returning to your family in Greece. So I think it's been about 21 years since that first qualification when you became a doctor. We're so glad you're still here. But can you share a little bit about that early journey with us?
Of course. So indeed, I came to the UK when I was 17. I wasn't even 18. I couldn't have a driving license. So yes, it was because of in Greece is different, the system. So I planned to train in medicine and become an oncologist. That was my purpose. And I wanted to come to the UK because of the quality of the education, and particularly to become an oncologist because I know that oncology in the UK is very advanced and the training is very good. So I came when I finished school and finished my A-levels, and I started my studies in Cardiff, which is the first place I've ever stayed.
Nice. I mean, that must have been hard. You were quite young, only 17. I know Greece is not that far, but that in itself is something, you know, to be proud of, because I know what it's like to move across to different countries. And yeah, not easy. And you were quite young. So anything that you remember those first few years that you really struggled with?
I wouldn't say I struggled, because I had this dream that I could see the future of being a doctor and training and treating patients. So that vision and that dream always kept me going. But definitely, you know, it was a struggle, and my mom visited me quite often. And then I remember the times when she actually went, and seeing her leaving always was tough. It became easier as the years went by, but I really enjoyed my time in medical school in Cardiff. It was excellent.
I wanted to ask you why your interest in oncology. What was your motivation? Because you knew that from the beginning.
I knew that from when I was 12, which is unusual, but we had a very bad experience in my family with my brother dying of cancer. And at that time, that type of cancer, which was a sarcoma, it was quite rare, and there were not many cases, certainly not in Greece, but also worldwide. So he actually had to come here in the UK and get special treatment done in London. And my family, my parents were here, and I stayed with my sister back then. So I was only 11 when that happened. So very curious about the whole subject, and, you know, why there was no treatment that could give him a bit longer. So I started digging into things very early on, and I got very interested around the biology of cancer, about research, and what can I do in the future to help advance treatments.
So it's a personal story. It's got personal meaning, and that seed was planted in you from a very young age just to improve things.
I would say so.
Yeah. So education does play a major role for you. Anyone just has to look at your profile to see all the qualifications that you've received. And you told me not that long ago that you'd happily do your doctorate in business administration, which is 4 years.
I will do it again.
You would do it again in a second.
Totally.
That's just incredible. So tell me a little bit about that passion for education. Again, does that stem from your family and from a young age?
I would say that my family always drove us to perform well. And I used to read quite a number of books when I was a little, and I used to write as well when I was a little, and I always wanted to write. But to write, you have to educate yourself, don't you? And you have to really listen to people, listen to stories, read about stories, and then you have your own view as well. And then you are capable of writing. So I always wanted to write a book, and which I did following my DBA. And my DBA really taught me that education is lifelong. It never stops, especially in a discipline like healthcare. But you have to love it. And as you know, I've written a second book. I'm planning to write a third book. And again, I'm reading a lot around those subjects to be able to write.
And I'm just wondering, where do you get that drive for that pursuit of being the best version of yourself, producing the best possible outcomes, rather than just settling for something that's good enough?
Well, something that's good enough, it never appealed for me. I always strove for something better, whether it's something personal in my personal life or professional life. That is not synonymous with perfection. I'm not somebody who is perfect. And in fact, I've written about failure and how failing is really important to help you learn and develop and become better. And again, it goes hand in hand with the education, doesn't it, Penny? Because, when you are reading around not just your own subject and your own discipline, but others. I've got an interest, for example, in medical law, and I'm reading a lot about it. That actually helps me develop as a doctor. It helps me with the way I communicate with my colleagues, even with my friends. So I always find opportunities, even when things don't go as well, to actually learn and become better.
Yeah, and improve. And I remember you mentioning that to me as far as your doctorate in business administration courses, that you wanted to understand the finance of running a hospital and all the other subjects that a doctor might not normally study in med school.
I love the finance. I think it's so different than what I was trained to do.
Yeah.
But you cannot think healthcare if you don't think about how the system works, and finance is part of it. The implications of my clinical decisions, the resources that are going to be used. So I need to understand resource allocation, don't I? So that drove me to do the MBA before I did the DBA, just to understand the holistic approach to healthcare system.
Yeah, I think that's it. You just want an understanding of anything that you're involved in, and you have that passionate for learning. That's brilliant. So how do you think the profession, your profession, has changed since you first qualified? I mean, we hear about doctors training here and there and then being tempted to move abroad. So has that always been going on, or is it more prevalent now, do you think?
I think with globalization, doctors or people who, want to train in disciplines like that do move around, because when my parents were engineers, but I remember them saying that you go to your first job and you stay there for 30 years. And I know you can't do that anymore. You have to gain experiences. And to do that, you have to move around. You have to, I wanted to move around, work in different organizations, see how different organizations approach my discipline or how healthcare systems work. So you may have seen that I moved in different NHS trusts, and I work with another global company called ICON, and I work with WHO. And all of those, working areas make me who I am, and to be able to deliver the best of myself.
Yeah, I love that. And just being more holistic and having a bird's eye view of what's going on and who, what other organizations are doing in other different parts of the world.
That's right.
That's brilliant. So as a doctor and a coach in health and well-being, what are some key principles or practices that you'd recommend for maintaining balance and mental health? Because, burnout can be a real concern for everyone.
Burnout is true, and I see it in my day-to-day life at work. I have experienced it. The important thing is that if we are not in a good health state, we cannot do our best life's work to start with. How can I look after my patients if I don't look after myself? And this is what I say to my colleagues. And it starts from basic things, which are not expensive. You sleep well, you drink enough water, you are together with other people, find your friends, your family, your people close to you and connect. And of course, the food that you eat. If you do those 4 things well, you are likely to be in a better physical and mental state.
Okay, sounds simple enough. I try to sleep, try to drink water, try to have that Greek Mediterranean food, but I still sometimes struggle, and maybe others, some of our listeners might too, with just working a little bit too long at some projects and maybe working at the weekend. It seems. Are you getting better at it? You've got the coaching and the training. Does it get easier as you kind of practice it more and tell your patients about it?
I definitely use a coaching approach with my
Okay.
patients, but to do so, I need first to understand about the priorities of the individual, because not everybody has got the same priorities, right? And some people, they value success, which means they will need to actually work longer to achieve a goal, and then they will relax. Other people, if you ask them, they will say, actually, I value more time with my family. They make me feel good, but my job doesn't allow me. So you can see the level of motivation they have to change, and then you help them based on where they are at that point to deliver what they want.
I see.
But having a purpose and having a goal is really a good starting point.
Okay, so
And-
you
and
really
you
list that listening exercise right from the beginning.
It's very key.
And yeah, I mean, you're very patient-centered. You have that, patient-first approach, and I think that's brilliant. That's really going to get the outcomes for them. And I guess goals can change over time. Someone might say, well, right now I want to achieve this promotion, and so I'm going to work extra hard. But down the road, I think I'll take a long holiday. I mean, I assume that it's changeable.
That's right. Goals do change. And as a coach, you have to meet people where they are at the point. Because if you're trying to change them at the time where they've got a different priority, and that is what drives men, then you cannot align with the people.
Yeah.
So you first need to understand at that point of time what matters most to people.
Can you think of an example or a patient that you recently helped that you kind of put them on the right path for them? Can you share a story without obviously giving us names?
I have to say I've got a lot of stories, and cancer diagnosis is quite a stressful time for people, but for some is the catalyst for change. And I have seen it all over again, people coming to me and saying, actually, I meant to change my jobs and I didn't have the courage to do it. I knew that the job was draining me, and I knew that I was feeling sick every evening, and I was using more alcohol and eating badly, but they didn't know how to change it. And when they had the cancer diagnosis, then they made the decision that actually enough is enough. And believe it or not, Penny, with coaching support, at the same time as their treatment, at the end of the treatment, they managed to lose weight, they managed to develop a new relationship, leave their job, try something new that they always loved. And they told me, listen to this, that having cancer has been the best experience in my life.
That's incredible.
So for me, that just says it all, doesn't it?
You can't ask for a better outcome than that.
That's
honestly. Right. I mean, I'm going to ask you this. It was later on in the question list, but I mean, you've helped so many people. And I'll share a little story. My husband and I we were invited to someone's house for dinner, and we were sitting there, we were talking, and at some point the woman shared with us that she had breast cancer. She was diagnosed, and that she's thanking her lucky stars that she was given this diagnosis, but had this amazing doctor that helped her. And I said, who's the doctor? And she said, Penny. So, I mean, there are probably so many stories like that. I mean, honestly, I just cannot put myself in your shoes to think every night how great you must feel to go to bed and feel that you've really helped people. I mean, changing their lives completely. What was the proudest moment? That was my question on the back of that. What's the proudest moment that you've had so far? There must be many.
Well, I'm proud of all my patients. I mean, they are so brave, and those who are managing to make those changes in their lives to improve their health for the future, I'm very, very proud of them. And it's amazing, Penny, to see people change. Actually, mentally, people who have come to me at diagnosis with lots of mental health issues, and by the end of the treatment and seeing them, following them up to see the transformation, really the impact that the positiveness has brought to their families, into their relationships, is amazing. And of course, some people struggle more than others. But I think another proud moment is the fact that we have more clinicians like myself around, and the work that I have been doing around the integrative oncology aspect and how that model of care can actually work in the UK like it works for other countries. We brought, with my colleagues, more clinicians on board, and that's really fantastic to see, because having more voices to say lifestyle medicine and complementary therapies do matter to people, and actually the communication with the patients and putting it right for them and using a coaching approach is actually really, really important and
That's
part
amazing.
of their treatment.
I mean, the lifestyle changes and the different options, and I think the emotional support that the patients get from their family, but also from you, that's a big, big thing as well.
It's absolutely so important.
Wow. I'm going to go back to your leadership journey, and I wanted to ask you, well, let's talk about your first medical leadership role was in the private sector in 2018. And I just wanted to ask you if you could share the defining moment or experience that set you on your leadership path at that time,
Sure.
if you remember back.
I have had other roles beforehand,
Okay.
around governance, and I worked with the Care Quality Commission, and I did some governance work in hematology and oncology in my previous trusts. But that role in 2018 was my first chief medical officer role, and indeed it was in a private company called Genesis Care, and I managed to obviously retain my NHS practice, which is very important for me. So I was still an NHS oncologist with a leadership role in the private sector. And actually the combination, although it was hard work, made me appreciate not just the differences between the two sectors, but more importantly, the commonalities and how we all drive for the same purpose. And actually partnership is really important, and learning from each other. And that is what I found really exciting, and that's why I'm working now with ICON, concurrently with my NHS roles.
That's incredible that you can do both at the same time, but that really gives you the insights of how each, sector, the public and the private sector work. And I think, we can see right off the bat, you would have that, that feeling of collaboration, communication,
That's
and
right.
collaboration. I think maybe it started from back then, but yeah, I think that's really important, and that's why we need you in leadership roles.
I think we need to see healthcare, we all need to work for the same purpose, and we are really. So there are lots of strengths in the NHS, but there are also strengths in the private sector. And we saw that during the pandemic, where the partnership came together, we are seeing it again now. And there are certain things that we can do really well in the NHS, and other areas where we can learn from the private sector. And that's why being a leader in both areas can bring those people together. And I like bringing people together, as you know.
I know. So what has been the biggest challenge you've faced so far in your leadership journey, if you look back, and how did you overcome it?
I would say, as a woman, Penny, obviously, we are living in a man-dominated world. We know that, and there are still disparities, selection-wise and recruitment-wise, especially in the digital sector, which is one area where I'm working at the moment. So, quite honestly, I always felt that I need to do something more on top of what everybody else has done. Although, I was very motivated to do everything that I've already done, I always felt that this is my duty to do it. I had to do it because I come from a different country, because I'm relatively young for those roles, and, because I'm a woman. So I would say that's a challenge.
It is a challenge, I think. And yeah, there's no cutting corners. You've got that very high standard of excellence anyway, and you go above and beyond. But you really felt that you had to do that as a woman, I suppose.
Yeah, and as I say, nobody told me that you had to do it, but you can almost sense when you get, for example, an interview, you get rejected, but the feedback that you get is not really constructive enough. You understand that you have to do something more to get to the same position. Yeah. But I think I have achieved that, and I'm in a position where, I have been dreaming to be, as a deputy CMO in the National Health Service and in leadership roles in the private sector. So I would say I'm blessed.
Well, you always look at the positive side. I know that. But I think those gender-specific challenges and how you navigate them, that is something that women have to deal with. I mean, how do you think the experience of being a female leader differs from your male counterparts then?
Again, because I like people behavior, and I have been studying that, as you know. I find that as females, we are probably either worrying too much or thinking too much of what we should have done in some aspects. We probably over-reflect about things and over-analyze sometimes things. And I can see my daughter doing the same. Whereas men, and I can see that in my boys, they take things as they come, and if something doesn't work out, they are not as hard on themselves, I think, compared to women. That's what I found, and that's what I've tried to change in me, by being coached myself and throughout my career, is not to be as hard on myself. And failure is part of success, as we talked about.
I do want to talk a little bit more about the failure and the coaching aspect a little bit later, but I wanted to ask you what your thoughts on this, staying on that leadership topic. I have heard senior leaders say that it can be lonely at the top. And I wanted to ask you, because you're very senior, have you found that? And if so, what do you do to overcome that?
I think the sense of loneliness usually comes with with responsibility. And I would say the more responsible you feel and accountable for what's happening in your organization, the lonelier you feel. So not everybody has the same sense of responsibility. Okay? But I would say it's true, because sometimes you have to make decisions which are not popular on everybody. And you cannot please everybody. So you have to come into terms that it will be hard decisions sometimes. But it's important then not to lose your communication skills, and using again the coaching approach, which I have used with my colleagues, with executive colleagues, is actually go back and reconnect despite those decisions. So I think it's in our hands whether we feel lonely or not. And nothing's stopping you being the person that you are, even at the top.
Wow, I love that message. And I love the fact that you suggest that we go back and reconnect. I mean, yes, some of your decision making isn't going to make someone happy. That's true. You can't please everybody all the time, as we hear. but that's a great way to go about it. I really will keep that in my back pocket. I'm also wondering, so from that first role that we talked about in 2018, which was some time ago, does it get easier being a leader? I mean, what tests you now as a leader? Is it different from what tested you back in 2018 or earlier?
It's pretty difficult to be being a leader. Again, going back to the sense of responsibility, not just for the organization and how it operates, but for the people that you actually develop and you're responsible for their development. So I am very mindful and aware of where everybody is, the people who report to me at the moment. I want them to do well and I want them to develop. So having all these areas, diverse areas of responsibility, the actual reports that you have to deliver to the people on the top, but the people that you actually look after as well, make sure that they are well. There are so many different priorities that you have to be on board at all times. But again, I try to use coaching myself and sit down and reflect, write things down in a diary, which helps a lot. Manage your emotions, understand when I am upset, understand when I'm sad, not hesitate to share it with my friends and my close people, but actually be professional where I have to be professional. And that is the balance that you need to strike as a leader.
That's great. Tell us more about that journal writing. Is it something that you use? Do you write stuff down for all the things that you feel, like whether you're happy or sad or anxious or you're not sure about a decision?
I don't do the diary every day, but I do it when things feel more stressful. So I try to understand how I feel, or if something has happened that upset me, I start writing down the events, and that gives me clarity. And when I don't write, I speak to people or I speak to my coach and I go through things, and then you get clarity, and you probably, when you start overthinking, you say, now probably I've gone too far and this is not really what it was meant to be. Do you see what I mean? So you have to actually give that space to yourself. I think every leader needs to give space to understand why things work, learn, and then move on.
Yeah, I think it's just getting that perspective, the clarity that you mentioned. And I think also just, having to, I'm thinking how challenging it must be to have to look up. So, you have to also report to people, but also managing and looking at everyone's well-being and their personal, professional development. That sounds quite challenging, but also very rewarding, because I'm sure you get it mostly right.
Extremely rewarding. And again, that is what drives me to do more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you 100%. I just wanted to ask you now about, is there a piece of advice that you received early on in your career that has stuck with you? Or maybe advice someone gave you that you're glad that you didn't follow?
I so love that question. I tried to observe every leader I worked with or I had any encounter with, because I've learned more from those who were not very good leaders, in fact. And that's a very difficult point, because you can be one of them or you can be a completely different person, and it's completely your choice. So I always recognized leadership skills and styles, and what made people happy, what made people stressed. So the impact of their leadership in everybody else. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted to be the person, the leader who people think about positively, that, if I left tomorrow, they will say, we believed in her. She was truthful in what she was saying. She led with integrity, and she always thought about the people, not just the actions.
I think for you, it's all about people. And that is so great that you put people first, and also the fact that you can learn about what kind of leader you don't want to be by kind of observing those the leaders that maybe you felt weren't the best. That's brilliant. What about personal development practices? What have you found most beneficial in your journey as a leader and also as a physician and as a line manager?
Personal development practices. I always try to give some space during the day for exercise. Going back to the lifestyle component, whatever that exercise may be for, whatever suits anybody, I think when I hear people saying I'm too busy to do exercise, I immediately I sit down and have a coffee with them or a cup of tea and talk about it because everybody can find that time. And exercise doesn't mean going to the gym for 2 hours. That's impossible for most people. But it could mean going out for a walk for 15 minutes in the morning, walk the dog, do another walk at lunchtime, have a break in your work. You don't need to sit 12 hours in front of a computer. And small changes can lead to better outcomes for your body, for your mental health, and for the people around you. So I try to incorporate exercise every single day. I try to go around and meet people. That's so therapeutic, Penny. And it's hard. You can stick in a computer, emailing or doing meetings. And when I recognize that I had enough, I just go, walk around, meet people, go to the wards, meet with the nurses, go to, where people are and make sure they are okay, have copy with people, how their day has been. And that's just so important.
I love that. And you've said that before, that social connection. I think that really energizes you.
It does.
I think, just having a quick chat and, we're connected on LinkedIn and sometimes we communicate that way. But I think that focus on, okay, let's just, take a 15-minute walk. That's all it takes. Or let's just go and say hello to somebody.
Yeah.
I think that stuff that definitely I can start incorporating and our listeners can too. It doesn't take a lot. But that connecting with people, you kind of forget about your day if it was, not the best, and focus on someone else and cheer them up and give them a smile.
That's right.
I really like that. That's right. Great. Resilience was a thing. I think you have a lot of it. What advice do you have for building resilience in both personal and professional life? I mean, you might have bad days too. So what keeps you going?
First of all, I learned that you're not born resilient.
Okay. That's good to know.
And the good news is that you can develop your resilience.
Tell us how.
It goes back to the same principle of being mentally and physically well. Okay. Again, if you haven't slept well at night, how can you deal with the adversities, let's say, of the following day? That will be more difficult. You're more likely, your cortisol will be up, you'll be more stressed, your responses will be not as effective. So if we take it physiologically, there is an explanation. So I would say, again, the basics should be right. And going back to the failure versus success, there is no way that we're going to do everything right in our lives. When I first failed in a couple of areas, I took it really badly. And, you start blaming yourself, and then what could you have done differently? But I moved away from that. The more experienced leader I became, to realize actually you have to have that to move forward. If you always have successes, you take it for granted, first of all. It's not true, it's not reality. And then when you do have a failure, you cannot cope. So it's actually quite good to try. And I'd say people, you have to try. You're going to fail, you try again. You fail, you try again. Look at the sports people.
Great example.
Tennis players. I'm saying that because my daughter loves it. Okay, and she plays for University of Warwick, so I would say that in this podcast.
Amazing.
But I see the cycles of failure and how she's now coping better, because that's part of the learning and that's part of the career.
So it's really part of success is not doing it right the first time, the second time, and learning. So it's just the attitude that we have towards failure. It's not really failure.
It's not really failure.
And we have to come to terms with we're not always going to succeed. I mean,
Correct.
who goes through life anyway with, getting things right the first time, getting every job they apply for, getting that leadership role, that promotion? I mean, that's definitely not me.
The more we do it, the less the failure, because you
Okay.
can be experienced enough to know what is going to fail, what's going to make you fail, and then you build the network around you to have that thought diversity, so that you have all these voices that push you into the right direction. So, but to get there, you have to accept that you need to learn from what didn't go as well.
So just dust yourself off, get the learning lesson, dust yourself off, and get back up and
That's
try
right.
again. And
Correct.
just keep going. Sounds easy, Penny.
It's not easy.
But I know it's not easy. Yeah, definitely. I think everyone can build their resilience more and just, like you say, just change that attitude. And I love you always go back to the basics: sleep, enough.
Hydration, physical activity, connection.
Yeah, okay, won't forget that. How can women, though, in particular, overcome things like, imposter syndrome? Sometimes they have those gender challenges. Just bringing it a little bit closer to women leaders. I don't know if they're prone to being, trying to be more perfect than men or not. But you did talk about failures in a blog post that I really liked. But what would you say to our women audience out there if they have that fear of failure or imposter syndrome?
I would say that women, and I have been in that situation, are sometimes pressurized between the family versus the work. Okay. And I can tell you from the experience that there is nothing stopping a woman succeed in career when they have had children and family. You just need to keep that connection with your partner and that communication in the same way as I described before, to make sure that it works for everybody. So one thing I would say is that don't stop pursuing your dreams. And again, have the people who believe in you. Go and be mentored by a good leader, a leader that aligns with your values, rather than a leader who, you disagree with, and don't become like them. Keep your identity, pursue your dreams, and be brave. If you don't do it, you'll never know whether you succeed or not.
Absolutely. And I think, the support of the people around you, your family, your partner, is so important.
So important.
It really
Absolutely.
is. But there's nothing stopping us. And we should just, also, we also want to have great roles. We also want to have a family. So, I know that you, I think, have the really good balance of maintaining that family and professional life. So
it's extremely important. Really important. But, there are people who cannot have children, and that's not, again, that doesn't define you, whether you have children or not. I would say the connection, the connectivity, your friends, your network, that is what keeps your resilience up. Yeah, okay. Definitely. We know loneliness is a bad thing, and loneliness can lead to illness, and definitely won't help you succeed.
Absolutely.
So be connected.
Agree 100%. Talking about mentorship now, I know that you're a big believer in mentoring and coaching, and you yourself are a mentor, aren't you?
I am. At the spring program.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I spoke in the spring program here, actually, and it was a year ago, and it was on a Women's Future Leaders program, wasn't it, with postgraduate students, and we talked about resilience, and we talked about lifestyle, going back to basics, and all those messages that we talk about now, how people can pursue their dreams, and they can do anything they want to do, and resilience can be developed.
As well as confidence, I imagine. You talked about about those things in sense of agency, etc.
That's right.
So you mentioned, I believe, that you have a mentor.
I have a mentor and I have a coach.
And a coach. Yeah. So how do they impact your career, and how does that influence your leadership style?
It's such a good question. First of all, it comes all down to you. You have to be motivated, as we talk about, to get to the next stage. If we talk about professionally, because my mentor and my coach, for both of them, I use them for my professional development, really. They help me massively. And when you are working in diverse sectors and diverse areas, so I worked in the voluntary sector at board level, and as we talked about, private NHS, you've got so many experiences and so many exposures that a lot happening within 24 hours that you have to make sense of them. All right. So speaking to somebody who is not my partner, who is not a friend, who would be a bit more biased, but actually a third person, I can play back. They usually help me to play back things that have happened, and how I perceived things. My perception changes sometimes, which help me get those events into order and understand them better. So that's what usually a coach does. From a mentor perspective, it helps at the levels where I am, because obviously I want to go higher. And to be able to go higher, I need to understand what the people of those positions learned, so I can follow what they have done.
Well, I think talking it over with professionals that are a bit more objective can really help. I think whether
Absolutely.
it's professional and you just, then you get the clarity and perspective after talking it over, but also professionally, and just seeing what they are doing, especially if, as you said, the values align. I think that's so great. So it must be really important to choose the right mentor.
Absolutely. That was my next point I wanted to make. You choose your mentor very carefully. And sometimes you have to change your mentor as you get to know them. If, you disagree with the values, or the values don't align with you, and that's fine.
Yeah. Sounds like it should be fine. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about balancing that personal and professional life. So I mentioned before, I think you have a really good balance. The demands of leadership and your family life. Can female leaders really have it all? How hard is that to achieve, do you think?
Yes, of course they can have it all. Of course they can have it all. Honestly, they do. And I'm not saying that I have achieved that perfect balance. If there is a perfect balance, Penny, I think balance shifts according to different times and different priorities. So I try to sometimes go with the flow, with what needs to be done at that particular time, and what the family priorities are versus what the career priorities are. But the more important thing is I always talk with my children and my husband things through. And everybody knows about everything because they have to.
It's like communication.
It is communication, yes. My worries, obviously I wouldn't talk to my little children for the career worries, but it's important if you use the right language. It's not very dissimilar to what they go through at school when they move classes, yeah? They have to develop those leadership skills as well, so they need to understand the challenges.
So, I mean, you do a lot, you're juggling a lot of roles, and you speak, and you're on panels, you're co-host for that podcast, as we mentioned, doing a lot of reading, another book. So how do you fit everything into your 9 to 5?
Penny, goes back to the purpose. Why am I doing, let's say, my oncology role, right? Mm-hmm. How can I do an oncology role well if I'm not a coach? And if I don't speak about real stories on my podcast, or if I don't try and educate my colleagues, my patients, the public, about prevention, for example. I'm giving a talk this Saturday around prevention and breast cancer in London. I couldn't be the oncologist or the clinician I want to be if I didn't do all of those things. So they are all part of what I do.
And you just find a way to,
to put them in.
Put them in. You know what? It's that self-awareness. It's like, this is what I want to achieve. This is what I need to be the best that I can be. Again, that high standard of excellence that you have for yourself. and you just find
That's
find a
right.
way to fit it in.
And what's important, I schedule the day according to really what's important. Things that I wouldn't say are unimportant, but somebody else can do them. I delegate to somebody else. And that's why having a good relationship with your team is really important, and trusting them that they're going to do it. And that's trust is really important.
Absolutely. So have a great team around you. And yeah, I mean, not everyone can delegate, but we can all prioritize. We can all just say, these are the 5 things that I need to do to achieve my goals, and the other ones are less important.
That's
And
right.
I'll try to get to them tomorrow.
And I talk to my kids. So if I have to do a podcast at 7:00, which obviously will disrupt something else, my kids know who Robin is, who I
Yes.
do the podcast with, and they know who the guest is going to be. So they are waiting for when the podcast comes out so they can listen.
That's brilliant. You're really getting them
It's a family
involved.
business. It's
It
a
really
family
is.
affair. Everything is a family affair.
Can I just ask you about the podcast? I've listened to your podcast. I know you're in your series too, and you speak to some amazing people. Is there something that you can share, maybe a story of someone that you spoke to recently that I know they're also impressive that you'd like to share with us, though?
Certainly. And there are so many great people I speak to, as you know, Penny. But one podcast talk, cancer talk, that I was fascinated to listen, and I didn't want it to end, was Naisha Winters. As she's the one of integrative medicine doctor from the US, and she very, very humbly described her story of being a teenager and being diagnosed with cancer and the struggles that she had to face. She was homeless at some point, and she had to go and work to pay for her treatment. And when she was told that this is it, there's nothing that we can do, she was naturally pessimistic, she says, but actually that triggered her to change completely to the more optimistic, or take it all on herself and say, I have to learn why I'm dying, or at least I can see whether I can change the destiny of dying. And when she said that, I had goosebumps. I think it was just, she had a purpose in life, okay? And now, many, many years, I think 35 years later, she's alive and she's educating the whole world. She's traveling around. I've met her personally. She's as beautiful as she was in the podcast. And she educates clinicians, professionals, of how to apply lifestyle medicine, how to apply all those principles of leadership we talked about during the cancer journey, but for all, conditions, chronic conditions as well.
That was a catalyst
she's
for
just
change, I think.
Huge catalyst for change. She's got her own course. I truly admired her for what she's done. I think she has been one of the most impactful physicians globally.
And I think, just like you, she really wants to change the world, and I think she's doing that.
Indeed, yes. And she's got a husband, and she's got the connection, and she makes sure when you see her and communicate with her, she loves every minute of that conversation. You can see it in her face. She's totally 100% with you.
Present. And also, I think it's so important to her, to the education piece, is to talk to others in that field and tell them what her experiences are, because she lived it.
Absolutely. She's living it.
She's still living it. I'm so glad she is. Such an inspiring speaker. I love how you get inspired by people. Who would your role model be then?
Oh, gosh. Do you know, Penny, I cannot pinpoint a single person. I would say every person I've met in my life has touched me in some way or another, okay? Certainly the people that come to the podcast, they are the people who have really gone through challenges to get where they are, but these are the people who keep being compassionate, they keep being humble. You can listen to the one that is coming out very soon with Dr. Deepak Ravidran, who came from a different country a few years ago. And he managed to not just develop the pain management service in a single organization, but he has incorporated coaching in his practice. He's written a book, and pain is such a complex area. And how can you actually treat patients and people with compassion and communicate well? That's half of the job as a clinician, because you reduce immediately the stress. You maintain that trust. People immediately feel well. So listen to that, and you will be truly inspired.
So Penny, I'd like to ask you this and learn from you if I can. Do you ever completely switch off?
Completely switch off? What is that?
Completely switch off. So when you finish your day at work and you go home to your family, that's it. You leave work at work and you don't think about it all. And you just have an evening of not thinking about work, not doing anything, not sending an email at 6 or 7 o'clock or 9 o'clock.
Oh, totally. Yes.
Do you?
Yes, totally. If I don't need to send that email because it's not going to help somebody at that point of time, I won't send it. But when you talk about switch off, I will switch off from my day job, but I may be engaged with my book, or I may write a paragraph, because actually that is what brings me into flow. That is what relaxes me. And to you, it may sound work. For me, it's a pleasure. It's
That's
my
your
pleasure.
choice. You
this
want
is
to write
my
the
pleasure.
book. You want to write another blog.
Or, I sit and read a book with one of my children, and have a conversation. Yes, of course, absolutely.
Wow. That is something I think that many of us would like to learn to do. How do you do it? You just tell yourself, that's it. I'm not going to think about my patients.
Yes.
I'm not going to think about my work.
You have to do that.
I need to
Penny.
look after myself just to replenish my batteries.
The basics, Penny. You have to look after yourself to look after others. Okay? So of course you have to switch off. Even if that is for an hour, and then your mind is a human mind, it will go to other areas, of course, and that's okay too. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
We have to allow the mind to go from one space to another, as long as it doesn't stay in the space of work. And it comes back to a relaxing evening so you can have a nice sleep. Because remember, sleep is critical. It's one of the basics. So if you keep working in your computer until midnight, you're not going to sleep. You pass this nice initial part where your deep sleep is slow. So you have to look after yourself.
Talking about sleep, do you turn off all electronics a couple of hours beforehand? How do you get a good night's sleep?
I cannot completely switch off my phone because patients may ring, so I have to be there, but they rarely do. But I put it in not for anybody to hear throughout the night, so in a normal mode, that it can alert me, but not alert everybody else, if possible.
So you have it there for, just because, well, it's for your patients and because you care so much, and that's the professional thing to do.
It's the responsibility.
It's the responsibility,
That's
going back to that responsibility. But you wouldn't work like an hour before going to bed.
No, I wouldn't.
And you don't want your kids to see that, because they also need some downtime as well.
Exactly.
It's that role modeling.
It is the role modeling. Very important. And
what do you do to relax apart from writing a chapter in your book?
My kids, I listen to them. Their lives, their stories, what happened during the day. I speak to my husband. I listen to music. We go for walks. I speak to friends. The normal things that connect you with people. I think that's the thing that relaxes me.
So what practices or habits have helped you stay grounded and focused, amidst challenges that you go through, or just your day-to-day, doing all the things that you do?
Being trained as a coach helped me a lot, and to do what you just described, trying to stay grounded. I make an effort to be aware of the people around me and how I feel and how people feel. And I'm trying to sense whether people are reaching burnout, and so I reach out to them first. So I look at people, I pick up the cues that they when they speak. So I'm trying to use the coaching approach in any dealing with anybody, and I find that a good way to connect with people, first of all, back to the connection, but also to ease any conflict and make sure that they go away from our conversation feeling better than then when they came in, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
And it goes back to the sense of purpose of how do you improve people, improve patients, how they feel, and make improvements in your life is making a difference to other people.
Yeah, I think that's what I would say that's your superpower. You're the compassionate doctor, you're very patient and person-centered and focused, whether that's your family, whether that's your inner circle, whether that's people at the hospital, whether it's your patients. I think that's your superpower.
I would say is a power, but you have to keep working on it, and you have to do it with yourself first. So when I feel super tired, I wouldn't go and send an email. I wouldn't go and speak and say something which is controversial. I'm going to go out, have a walk, breathe some fresh air, drink some water, do some stretches, ground myself. In between meetings, for example, when there has been a tough meeting, take a few deep breaths, get your thoughts together, go to the next one. Otherwise, there is a risk of getting into a production line of meeting and losing the connection again.
Losing the connection and not really going 100% yourself.
That's it.
If you're a little bit upset or you're tired or, you need that break and that space in between, I mean, what you described is the ideal situation. I would love to be able to do that.
I don't always do it right. But when I recognize it, I definitely try to amend it and go back to if I was hard with an individual or not attentive enough, I may go and say, how are you? Simple.
I think, yeah, sounds simple. I think that self-awareness that you have about yourself, always, wondering how you're feeling at the time and whether it's the right time to reach out to someone now or should you go for that walk. I think that is also something that you're really good at because you're always looking to yourself first as a leader before you do anything else, always going back to how you're feeling and in order to be able to help people and bring a smile to someone's face or really be present when you're talking to a cancer patient. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. All right, talking a little bit about the future. What changes would you like to see in the next generation of female leaders in healthcare, tech? I mean, I know or generally.
I want to see more females in areas and disciplines where they don't exist. So analytics, for example. Women are inherently very good with data, but these jobs are usually dominated by males. And the good thing that women have is they can communicate the data, you see. So when you analyze them, you're more likely to bring life to that data by communicating them. So I want to see more females in that space.
I love that. They can, give that narrative, tell a story about the numbers or the data.
Tell a story about the numbers, that's right.
That's great.
Make it meaningful to people.
I like that very much. I mean, there are just generally challenges around getting more women into those STEM subjects. What can we do to make that better, do you think? I mean, we have great role models like yourself, but generally, how can we change that?
It's giving them the opportunity,
okay.
Which is going back to the mentorship. Mentorship is great, but you have to have a sponsor as well. And I've recently read a study where it says if we had 10 men, 9 out of 10 will be sponsored by somebody, okay? Whereas if you have 10 women, only 1 out of 10 will be sponsored. And when we say sponsored, it's somebody with in a higher position with power, recognizing the skills in an individual and actually place them in a position where they wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity and give them the resources to thrive.
Oh, that's such a big gap, Penny.
And I think women need more of that. They need more sponsorship, probably less mentorship. They're super mentored. They're under-sponsored.
What can we do? Do we have to talk to our employers?
It's step by step, Penny. Things are changing. We are seeing, for example, more females entrepreneurs. really young, passionate people who work between NHS. They have created their own company. They're driving the communication out. They're there. So they need to also mentor people, as I try to, they need to. And if those successful people do the same, then, more women will come out and more employers will listen.
Okay, we got to work on that one.
We're going to work on that,
We're going to
Penny.
work on that one.
Definitely.
If you can go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be? Whether it's that young girl in Greece reading all those books, or, seeing what a family can go through and the hardships. What would you say to yourself, knowing all that you know now and, being so successful?
I would say I would first of all thank myself for not giving up. That is one thing. Sometimes we don't pat ourselves in the back and say, actually, you have done really well. Secondly is be brave and continue to be brave and put yourself forward and actually tell about yourself like I'm doing now. A few years ago, I wouldn't be able to do that, Penny, because, you feel you're not good enough, or actually what you've done, everybody else has done. But actually, everyone's story is special. And I'm definitely not the smartest in the room. There are other people who are smarter than me. They've got a different trajectory, different stories, and we are all different. But my story, I cherish it. I've got more to do, or I want to do a lot more than what I've just done. So I'll keep going.
Oh, that's amazing. Pat yourself on the back. Give yourself credit. Don't give up. And share your unique journey, because everyone's journey is different and special. We can all learn from each other.
Correct.
So what legacy then do you hope to leave behind? Because I know you want to do a ton more. You got that third book coming up. You've got the second series in your podcast, Cancer Talk with Robin. Personally, professionally, if you can see yourself, 50 years from now, looking back, what would you like to have achieved?
Well, again, is what people say when you're not in the room, Penny. I think that's, for me, very important. If I have to connect one value with who I am, is integrity. Is people, I want people to remember me as a respectful leader and a strong leader, but at the same time, compassionate and being close to people. And those two things are not mutually exclusive. You can achieve a lot and be assertive and make changes, and at the same time make sure that people around you are well looked after. And you can do both.
How do you do both?
All the things that we discussed. Your basics, your
giving us
connections.
hope. Yes.
Be grounded, have a coach, have a mentor. Have a goal, have a vision, drive yourself, be good to yourself, be kind to yourself and others, and it will come.
Oh, well, that's a fantastic message. And we are getting a little bit closer to the end of the podcast, although I can speak to you for hours, as you know. What advice would you give to women aspiring to make a significant impact in their careers?
First of all, having that spark of wanting to make a change is very important. And if you are at that stage, go for it. Define what it is. Have the right people around you. Get your basics right and go forward.
Perfect. What do you think has made you successful?
My family. I owe a lot, not just to my parents and how, I was brought up with those values, but the family I have created, they give me the strength and the purpose every single day.
And that's simple.
I think without them, I wouldn't have been able to sit here and talk about all these things and be the resilient leader that I think I am.
You're very grateful for that. It sounds.
I'm very grateful.
Give them all the
I
credit.
give them all the credit, 100%.
Just as I'm sure you give your teams a lot of credit.
Totally. It's all about people. But me as a person, to be able to go out and support my teams is the family.
That's amazing. And I have just one final question. What do you think is the biggest takeaway you hope our audience can learn from today, from listening to you speak?
Well, I hope that people can see that I'm quite honest about what worked and what didn't work in my journey. And I think any listeners should not be afraid to talk about what those things and how things have started in their lives. Where do they want to be? Nobody should be embarrassed to say, you know, I didn't do well at the beginning, but now I've changed and that's what I want to do. And maybe I had a good job, but I left it because something else drives me more. And I think this is amazing, and people should be driving to do the things that makes them better as people, as personalities every single day, and make the other people around them better, whatever that means. And it's not all about money. It's not. And I can tell you very quickly that I was speaking to a close colleague recently who he's thinking of doing a bit more entrepreneurial work, okay, rather than the day-to-day 9 to 5. But he said it doesn't pay as much, and again, it's exactly as I just told you, that money really doesn't bring happiness. It's the purpose that drives you.
Your why.
Your why. And once you do what you love to do, everything else will come because you will be in a different psychological state.
You'll be happy.
More. You'll be happy to create more and do all those changes that bring you happiness and bring the best out of you.
That's just such a great message, and I can't thank you enough for sharing all the things that you did with us and that final takeaway. Penny, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm so grateful that you came here to our studio and talk to us. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Such an honor to be here. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.